It was like it was a difficult thing for me to be in that position to tell my son, you have to go work for somebody.
Well, compounded heavily by the fact that their father didn't do that. Like I was reading a book about, it was in a Malcolm Gladwell book, and it kind of talked about to what degree money does make your life better or easier, right? And then what they found is that it caps out at around this quote, 175. Anything past that, it's going to plateau for a while, and then it's going to start going down, actually. Like how, what the children are going to turn out like. And one of the theories is it's really easy for parents to say, no, I can't buy you that bike because I can't afford that bike. That's easy to say. To say, I could buy you that bike, but I'm not going to buy you that bike because it'd be bad for your character is almost impossible for parents to say.
Yeah, there's definitely levels. I've heard stories about James Brown where they say that James Brown didn't have a relationship with any of his children because his childhood was so hard growing up. He didn't want people to be able to lean on his name for their success. He really was focused on almost to a fault.
Well, that's the song "Boy Named Sue." You know that song, Johnny Cash song. It's really a Shel Silverstein poem.
Okay.
But his dad leaves him and his mom when he's young, and what he does before he leaves, he names his son Sue because he knows that'll make him tough. Since he's not going to be around to make him tough, this name Sue will get him there.
Oh, that's a good, good songwriting concept.
Now, in Brooklyn, where you grew up, and I would just be fully speculating, but even when I tell my story now out in public.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, and it was probably the last town where half the town still drove to Detroit and worked there, and then just to the west of us became farmland.
Okay.
So it was a weird mix of straight up kids got on my school bus with shit all over their boots because they had shoveled out the barn that morning, and then there were kids whose parents were engineers at General Motors and Ford.
Right.
So it was this weird mix. But when I'm telling my life story, I'm focusing on the part that we lived in a welfare apartment when my mom first left my dad. I guess it's this, I can't avoid this bootstrap story. It's a better story, right? I skipped the part where my mom built this great company and we lived in a pretty damn nice house by the time I was a senior. And I also was really drawn to, for lack of a better word, the bad kids. Like I wanted to be in the neighborhood where there was no curfew. I was drawn to that. And so I wanted to be that in a weird way where I ended up downplaying, that we did live in a nice house. There's these weird kind of social barriers where to me that you kind of hide certain stuff. So I'm curious, having super educated parents in Brooklyn, hanging around in Brooklyn, was that something you tried to downplay or did you embrace it?
That is an excellent question. There's a lot of layers to that question, and you're also being honest about your upbringing in asking the question. A recent thing happened to me on social media is, you see me on social media.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, this stems a little bit from some of the arguments I've seen you have, and I've seen people attack you. One of the attacks is like, "What the fuck do you know?" Because your parents were professors.
And right. So there's a lot of layers to it. One first is that a lot of racist people in this country associate education with rich and white.
Yes.
So if you're an educated black person and you carry yourself as if you've received a high level of education, somehow in these people's eyes you're less black, and you have less
in the black community's eyes.
I'm in the black in every community.
I guess white people too.
Yeah, because it's not black people who are attacking me for my upbringing. It's white supremacists mostly who are attacking me for my upbringing.
Oh, okay.
Because they're like, why are you standing up for black people? You went to boarding school. Your parents are professors.
Okay.
One, the idea that professors are rich is a completely flawed idea.
Sure.
Most teachers,
New York City,
absolutely. Like there's a small number of professors that might make more than $100,000. But right now, today, the only reason I know this is because I've had to look it up to bolster my argument. You know what I'm saying? Like the average salary for a professor of any school, whether it's a city college or Ivy League, right now is $98,000. Now, when you take a professor who's working at an inner city college or like in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, or Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Like my father worked at College of New Rochelle on Fulton Street in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn when I was growing up. My mother to this day works at Medgar Evers College in Crown Heights. Yeah. These are some of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Yeah. These are city colleges. These are not rich institutions. Yeah. And so you take that average number of 98, you have to cut that in half. And then the fact that these are black institutions, you have to cut that even half even more.
Yeah.
And then when you take it back to the fact that I'm talking about 1975 to 1985, we're not talking about now.
Yeah.
So one is the idea that professors are rich. That's just a lie.
Yeah.
Secondly, the idea that somehow Park Slope, Brooklyn, has always been the neighborhood where Maggie Gyllenhaal lives. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not always been that neighborhood.
Right.
You
right.
know,
It's been gentrified heavily.
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And when I grew up in Park Slope, it wasn't the Park Slope of nowadays. It wasn't.
Right. Well, nor was New York in general.
New York
right?
in general. And obviously there are neighborhoods in Brooklyn that are far worse, such as Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy are worse than Park Slope. But it was never this place where rich people lived. And now what I will say is we have to acknowledge our privileges.
Yeah.
I am more privileged to grow up in Park Slope than a black kid who grew up in Brownsville.
Yeah.
I have educational privilege.
Yeah.
I've inherited educational privilege by being born in a house full of professors.
Yeah.
Most people are not. What 50 Cent raps about, he was born in a house of drug dealers.
Yes.
So it informed his content, informed who he was as an individual.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Armchair is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Monica, don't you find it to be intimidating finding someone who's actually great?
Yeah, I find them to be few and far between.
Yes, and what do? You just go hang out at the coffee shop and see who looks studious or meticulous?
I don't think that's a good idea.
It's not, and you either have to pray for a bolt of lightning of good luck to hit you, right? So I went and did someone's podcast. I look over, this guy Rob seems to really have it together. And then I just stole Rob for this podcast. Mm-hmm. And then similarly, I noticed how brilliant you were at writing for Kristen, and then I just stole you from her. But that's no way to grow a business.
Thievery.
Yeah, how many more people can I steal from others? So I really recommend ZipRecruiter. They do a tremendous job of pairing you with a very qualified candidate. It is a very quick process. ZipRecruiter has revolutionized hiring. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter's technology learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. That's why 80% of employees who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And that's what makes ZipRecruiter the smartest way to hire. ZipRecruiter is a sponsor of Armchair Expert, and now listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Dax. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Dax. Once again, ZipRecruiter.com/Dax. Our show is also brought to you by MeUndies. Pretty good. That needs a little work, but
Yeah, we'll work on it.
you know, I really like coming up with jingles for MeUndies because I'm just so giddy and happy when I'm in MeUndies.
They're so comfortable.
But new MeUndies just arrived for you and I
Yes.
this week. I've got a really elegant purple pair.
Your
of
purple
trunks.
is beautiful.
Yeah, but I'm feeling yours the most.
You like mine.
Oh my goodness, so summery and playful.
Bright.
What are the icons on them?
It's kind of like a colorful.
Is it a fruit salad?
It's
a
like
fruit salad?
splotches of color. It's very nice.
Yeah, very exciting, very vibrant. I can only imagine that if one of the salad they would just think, good times ahead. This is one of the products that Monica and I we speak from the bottom of the heart. We love our MeUndies.
You couldn't even believe how soft they are.
No, you won't believe it. When you put them on, you'll think,
Yeah.
what kind of voodoo's happening on my privates and buttocks and hips?
And what is it?
They're made from sustainable sourced beechwood trees, and the fabric will not sag down or ride up. And guys, for me, the ride up is the thing that I just can't tolerate. Life's too short. I absolutely love them. Still not sure? Well, MeUndies has a deal for you, my listeners. Armcharies, first-time purchase gets 20% off their first pair of MeUndies and free shipping. That'll get you 20% off your first pair, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee. Go to MeUndies.com/Dax. That's MeUndies.com/DAX. But there is, right, in the hip-hop music world, there is that's a commodity, or it has been a commodity.
Like street cred.
Yeah, street cred. Well, certainly suburban white kids are drawn to the danger of that whole world.
Absolutely.
It's so exotic. So then it's obviously inflated and characterized by a lot of the singers, right?
Well, just like you said, you were drawn to certain dangerous elements.
Yes.
Because of how you grew up, so was I.
Yeah.
And
I
so
want to be in the Hell's Angels.
yeah, so even you're a tough guy. But my parents changed their situation. We grew up in a railroad apartment. I lived in a room with my brother. We had bunk beds. You know, by the time I was in high school, my parents bought their first house. And then my parents were so focused on education. When I was failing out of Brooklyn Tech, they put all their money into sending me to boarding school. And to be honest with you, and I don't really speak about this as often, but it broke them. It broke their finances. It broke up their marriage. It was a tough situation.
Really?
You know, I really, really thank my parents for taking me out of the inner city school system and doing everything they could to put me in boarding school. It changed my life around. I probably would have been in jail right now.
Yeah. And what, you went to a boarding school in Connecticut?
I did. Me and James Vanderbeek went to the same school.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Really?
Cheshire Academy.
The Beak. Were you friends?
We were.
Really?
He acted in the first play that I wrote.
Get out of here. This is very exciting. This is like finding out that Jada Pinkett Smith and
Tupac.
Were friends in
Like,
school.
who's the Jada Pinkett Smith in this relationship?
James Vanderbeek, I think.
I'm Tupac.
Yeah. So you leave Brooklyn and you go to a boarding school. And what grade is this?
This is 10th grade.
Okay. So yeah, that's that scares the fuck out of me thinking of that. I moved schools in 9th grade, a new high school, and that was very hard.
Yeah.
Because I had this whole identity perfectly carved out, and then I showed up this place, and they had better shoes than I did, and everything unraveled, my pimples and bad haircut, whatever. Is it safe to assume this boarding school in Connecticut is a lot more white people now?
Yeah, it was 137 kids in the whole school. There were 6 black kids. 5 of them were there to play basketball.
Okay. And you weren't one of them.
I was not one on the basketball team.
Yeah.
I was in drama.
So when I talked to Joy on here, she had a very similar experience. So she grew up. Why can't I remember the name of that? Monica, where'd she grow up?
Bronx.
She left the Bronx and went to a Connecticut boarding school as well.
Do you remember which one?
I don't.
I probably played them in lacrosse.
Yeah. Oh my God! You know that was her sport.
I didn't play lacrosse.
You didn't?
I played baseball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I played baseball, but I did pick up a stick and I learned the basic lacrosse moves.
Well, her thing was, I'm not going to come. Basically, I'm not going to come here and sing. Like, I know you guys want me to run track and play basketball, but I'm going to play lacrosse, tennis. So she specifically chose all kind of traditionally,
I was in Blue Key Society. I was in I was in drama. I was in I played baseball. I played baseball in Brooklyn, so that was a natural fit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is I think she said then by her senior year, she was like, "Oh fuck it, I'll run track," and then she was great at track.
Right.
Yeah. Just ran past
But hers
everyone.
was intentional. She like made
Yes.
a choice. Was yours, or you just those were the things you liked, and so you did
No,
them?
yeah, I mean,
brother.
it sounds like she was more intentional. Those were definitely my interests. But I do have remember Mr. Casson, that's my first day, the basketball coach. He came up to me and was in my ear for a half hour about joining the basketball team. And I'm like, you don't get it. I suck at basketball.
Yeah, I'm not that black kid. And so when you go there, do you fit in easily?
Something I can help you with?
It took about a year.
I'm so afraid of saying all these cliches, but I think I'm interested in them for reasons downriver, which is, are you code switching? You're now learning to go
Keith's
back
a
and forth
two-bit
between the
hustler.
Bronx and
He runs a
Connecticut
gambling
and succeed in
operation
both
out of a
places.
shack.
Code switching is a
Ask
great
me,
word, and
he
that's
went-
exactly it.
I
Is that
suspect he's running
what I
drugs,
learned?
too. I just can't
I
prove it.
learned
Maybe you can find something.
that
Talk
if
to
you
him,
make
poke
yourself
around the shack,
indispensable,
something.
that you can do anything you want. And by being the
Captain
black
Parker.
kid who was like not
Keith's
on the
a two-bit
basketball team,
hustler.
Yeah.
He
being
runs
the
a
black kid
gambling
who was
operation
on
out
the
of a
Roto
shack.
fucking play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was. I remember I
people
was
have gone
selling
missing.
pot at the school, and boarding school. If anybody's been to boarding school, you get kicked out for that.
Right.
All the white kids who got caught selling drugs got kicked out.
Yeah.
They pulled me and had a meeting. They was like, "You have to stop selling.
Oh, really?
Please, you have to stop. We can't afford to lose you."
Yeah, you're too important.
Yeah,
to
so
us.
learn that lesson though. That was a life lesson. I was like, oh, okay, you just gotta. These rules don't matter.
Right. Yeah. That is a kind of important something to observe early on, which is like, okay, yeah, there's an architecture to all this, but you can also get outside of it, right? I think so much of like people you see who make it to, let's say Bill Clinton, right? He runs for governor of Arkansas. You're too young. That can't be done. No one's ever been that young. And then he wins, and then he gets booted, and then he runs again. They're like, no one's ever come back. So if he's gathering all this data that says, oh no, these rules I was told don't really apply to me.
Yeah.
Then of course you think you can get a blowjob in the White House because you've already proven that like most of these rules you've been told are pretty fluid.
Excellent point.
You know? So in what was your favorite part of that experience of being in that world?
Really that education. Learning how white people deal with each other. Spending the night, like making friends with white kids, going to their houses, spending, sometimes on the weekend I wouldn't go home.
Yeah.
You go to spend the weekend at your friend's house and just seeing how white families with means operate and how that was different from where I came from.
Yeah.
It's like Chappelle's joke about going to his friend's house and they're about to eat the stovetop.
stuff.
Yeah. It's- Exactly that.
So funny.
It's the stovetop experience.
Yeah, that was tremendous.
Just a
So
little
you
rest
saw that
stop that me
special,
and my
right?
good
I
friend
did.
Lupe set
Did
up.
you love it?
I did.
Last
I'm
stop on your
good
way
friends
into
with him, so I
Vegas,
watched him
first stop on your way
develop
out.
those jokes
That's what I
over
said.
time all over the world. Like I've watched him in London and in,
Anything else I
in
can do for
Ohio
you?
and San Francisco developing those jokes, and some of them were a lot worse.
Yeah.
He reined some of that stuff
Yeah,
in
you
for the
gotta
special.
break a lot of eggs.
We're
before
super
that.
fans of his.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
That special, we were taken aback by that special.
He also in it. There's so many political things you and I could talk about eventually, but one of the cool things about him, like when you're talking about what you picked up there and code switching, all these different elements can put someone in a very unique position to make some observations that most people can't.
Sure.
Right.
Fire
So
away.
whereas there's something about Chappelle, I think, being black that allows him to do some things that I can't get up on stage and do. There's some observations that he's saying that
need
I'm
water?
like, oh, I'm so
I got
glad
wa-
he's saying that because it's really not my position to say
Right.
that, but I have the same thought. When he's getting into the fact of like, look, I can think something's weird and I can make fun of it and also really want the rights of that person to be protected. And I want them to have the same opportunity that anyone else has. And I can also say I think it's weird or funny.
Well, that's just the
I can't
genius of
say
comedy.
that as a white dude, nor should I, but I'm glad that somehow buys him some latitude to do that.
Yeah, I've talked to him about some of these jokes, and we've had discussions about, as a comedian, you're allowed to generalize to a certain degree.
Yes.
You're a lot of the great comedians, whether it's Dice Clay or Chris Rock or Chappelle,
Yeah.
or Sam Kinison, is like it's based on huge sweeping generalizations.
Yeah,
of people.
women do this, men do this.
Yeah,
Black people
women
do
be
this, white people
shopping.
do, yeah.
And it gets to the point where it can either become cliched or it can lead to a very astute social commentary, depending on which way you take it.
Yes, well, he has the most artful way of weaving in really poignant historical stuff, and I just think above all skills, that's the one that he's just incredible at. I think Chris Rock does it too pretty well, but boy, Chappelle really fucking, like, you can actually be choked up in the middle of that thing.
Yeah, it's special what he does. He has a special gift.
Yeah. So you get out of this boarding school. Do you go straight to NYU? You go to NYU at some point.
I graduated in '93 and I started in NYU. My roommate was John Forte. We started together, and
Who's John Forte?
John Forte is a rapper that I grew up with. He became famous because he produced on that first Fugees album.
Oh, okay.
And then he's on the record with Wyclef, Staying Alive.
Okay.
He's on the Fugees song Cowboys and Family.
Yeah.
But he famously got arrested for selling drugs and did 8 years in prison. And then George Bush, the last thing George Bush did before he left office was pardon John Forte.
You are kidding me.
So he's been out since 2004.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I
of
didn't
all
either.
people to pardon him. Why? How did that?
he was very good friends with Taylor. I forget the guy's first name. James Taylor and Carly Simon's son.
Oh, okay.
He's good friends with John Forte. So he spends a lot of time at Carly Simon's house in Martha's Vineyard. Yeah. Next door is Orrin Hatch, senator Republican from Pennsylvania. Orrin Hatch falls in love with John Forte as an artist. John Forte goes to jail. Orrin Hatch, as despicable as he can be, spends a lot of time in George Bush's ear like, you got to get my man John Forte out.
Yeah.
You got to get him out. You got to get him out.
Yeah.
So John Forte is, John Forte is just like me. He's the same politics as me.
Yeah.
But he's a guy who was pardoned by George W. Bush.
What a wild story.
And now God bless him, he now lives in Martha's Vineyard. He has a brand new baby. His Instagram is just full of joy. You know what I'm saying? Like every day is him and his baby and walking on a hike.
Does he hashtag thank you George W?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't do that.
But you point out something great, and I think this is something lacking. I think as and you and I are both on Twitter, and I see your arguments a lot, and I get into myself. But I think we have really more than ever been forced into this binary opposition, right? Like, so the neighbor on Martha's Vineyard who was in George W. Bush's ear, right? So like you're kind of forced now to either soup to nuts hate a person. Or soup to nuts love a person, right? And to soup to nuts love a person, you got to now start excusing all the human shit they do. And then to soup to nuts hate a person, you got to ignore some shit like whispering in George W. Bush's ear.
Right.
And people are so complex, right?
That's a good point.
There's amazing virtue, and then there's despicable deeds, and it's just this. We all are this way,
right?
If you got to peek on my whole life, there's shit you'd go, well, that's a bad person. That human being is no good. We should throw them out. But it's just one big thing. We gotta be able to pick what things we like and dislike, and not shut everything down.
Well, for activism, and I'm speaking, most people are not activists, you know, and in the activist community, it's definitely, which I consider myself a part of.
Yes.
It's definitely a which side are you on conversation. It's like either you're going to be down with this solidarity, down with this intersectionality, or I'm going to treat you like you're the enemy. And so I get that gut instinct. But of course there's nuances, and there's, human nature, and there's people grow and people change, and not everybody agrees. So you have to, it's very, very, social media has made it harder for us to have those conversations, because now everyone is volunteering their bullshit.
Yeah.
Before it was like you really had to get to know somebody to understand really that was your enemy. Now somebody could just say something like, I don't like that Beyonce wore dressed like a panther at the Super Bowl. And you're like, fuck you forever.
You could not know. You could be at the grocery store, see that same person you hate doing something with their child, where you go like, oh my God, that's just a good human being. Look at that care that they're giving to this other person.
I think I think that's just growth.
Yeah.
That's just growth and paying attention. I think if you're focused on growing as a person, you're going to be aware of those things.
Yeah.
And the people who make arguments online with strangers, they're just completely not aware of any of those things. The people who jump in and be like, I'm going to tell you my opinion. And I would say most of the people who come at me and say something that I'm like, well, that was really racist. They've never been called a racist in their life.
Right.
And they never even thought their intention wasn't racism. Yeah. They just were like, they saw something that triggered them for some reason.
Sure.
And they're not understanding their privilege in that situation.
Right.
And they're doing what they've been taught in America. You're taught that you're special. You're taught that you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to say whatever you want, and this is a free country.
Well, you're very, very encouraged to be an individual above all things.
Yeah.
So you're almost hardwired to be provocative. You're stepping out probably a little further than your position maybe even is. And this is one of my issues that you and I will probably disagree with, but I worry about the term racist. I worry about the term homophobic. I worry about all these terms that have no gradation in them. And so when I see them used, I think a little bit flippantly, I go, well, that really undermines what we're calling David Duke. If you're going to call the dude who made, something that was just insensitive and not aware of their privilege versus a man whose goal is to strengthen the white race and get everyone out of this country, we need different words for that. Even in the Me Too movement, in Matt Damon came under fire for this. There is a difference between Weinstein and Al Franken.
But see, I think Matt Damon's a good example because here's somebody who there's some bias here. You might be friends with Matt Damon. You might. I'm a fan. I've never met the man.
Yeah,
super fan of his work.
Love his work.
Right. I've seen him do things and say things that were a little insensitive. Like there was a whole thing with the Project Greenlight thing and whether or not they were working with people of color.
I
don't remember the details from that, but I remember reading it and being like, you need some education on that era.
Sure.
So with the Me Too comment, while technically what he's saying is correct, the way he said it and his position of privilege in that situation is what made it incorrect, because he started with, if I remember correctly, and you probably could look it up, we started with, I haven't been paying attention to what's been said. You can't start like that.
Okay.
You can't come into it saying, I haven't really been paying attention.
I'm ignorant on this topic,
but here's my opinion.
Okay,
right? And so his opinion was what you just said, which on the surface, I agree with. But if you're Matt Damon who worked closely with Harvey Weinstein on many projects.
Yes.
Like Harvey Weinstein's been very involved in your career, and you've broken a lot of bread with him and made a lot of money with him.
Yeah.
You probably should just shut the fuck up on that subject matter.
I don't think Matt Damon's leaving his house and hosting a press conference. He's out promoting something completely unrelated, and they are only asking him that because he does know Weinstein. So now his options are to say completely silence, which you could say that you're supporting through silence, or he's got to wade out into the waters and say something. So he's in a lose-lose situation right out the gates, because he didn't come to this press conference,
he's
to
promoting
this junket. Whatever fucking...
But I think he...
Oh man, how am I supposed to buy chems now? Fine, here. Worried? Do I look worried to you? I've got this under control, baby. No one else can do what I do here. What else? I'm in charge. This whole operation depends on me. No fantastic, no power. Got the whole NCR suckling my teats, and it feels so good. Well, see, we're getting power because the guy running this place is fantastic. But the mirrors outside aren't aimed right, so we're running at 1% efficiency, and I guess that just isn't good enough for some assholes. Trouble is, most of the controls for this place aren't here. They're in the tower. And that place has some crazy pre-war security system that the dumb shit NCR set off when they took over. Killed 2 guys. Now they won't go near it. They want me to make an omelet, but I can't break any of their eggs. Know what I'm saying? There's these 2 terminals outside. They control the mirrors. I tried fooling with them, but didn't get very far. You'd have to get them to talk to the mainframe up in the tower, then do the rest from up there. I'm guessing, but it sounds good, right? Hey, you're not thinking about going up there, are you? Well, hey, if you find yourself up at the mainframe, do yourself a favor and make sure you send the power to the right place. It needs to go to the Strip and McCarran. Because I get paid, that's why. Per kilowatt hour. Whatever the hell that is. That's where the NCR wants the power, so that's where I want it. But you do that, maybe I put in a good word for you with them. Fantastic's little helper. There's a reputation you can hang your hat on. Fuck, man. Everything. I push buttons, I turn dials, I read numbers. Sometimes I make up little stories in my head about what the numbers mean. Like one time I imagined they were a code to get into a vault full of naked women. Man, how cool would that be? No, man. I know exactly what I'm doing. I just don't know what effect it's going to have. Over there controls power in this building. That station has readouts on the computer network. That big knob there makes a crazy noise. Sparks come out of that slot if you put stuff in it. It was easy, man. They were going door to door asking if anyone knew any scientists. I said look no further. They asked me if I knew anything about power plants. I said as much as anyone I had ever met. They asked me how well I understood theoretical physics. I said I had a theoretical degree in physics. They said welcome aboard. Here, you want this. It's the password to one of the terminals outside. Found it written on one of the stalls in the bathroom.
Him in a samurai outfit, and all of a sudden...
Okay, that's another point.
Okay.
Now, while I watched that movie,
What is the movie?
I forget the name of it.
Okay.
I watched that movie, and as much as I enjoyed the action scenes, and as big of a fan I am of Matt Damon, I'm like, do we need to see another fucking white guy in Asia? Like, what is this? Why is he just killing everything? And it's like you're doing this, and then you're like, hey, you know. But I think what he should have done, what he had to do, which he didn't do, was because you're so close to Weinstein, it's your duty to inform yourself about what's going on. You can't show up at an interview and be like, I don't know what's going on. And I've learned the hard way because what I did on Twitter, I had an argument with a feminist collective of people.
Okay.
That I to this day feel like I'm owed an apology for, and felt like I was right in the points I was making. But the thing I did wrong was I self-declared myself an ally to these people.
Yeah,
and I learned online that you can't do that.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, so I've learned the hard way that as I'm Talib Kweli, I make songs uplifting women. I got Black Girl Pain, and you know all these positive things I've said and done for women. And I'm being attacked by these feminists. And I'm like, my first reaction, like, hold up, I'm your ally.
Yes.
And that's where I fucked up at. And it's because I didn't recognize my privilege in that situation. So while 90% of what I've said was right, because I approached it from a privileged position. It just dismantled everything I was saying. You know what I'm saying? Which was hard for me to swallow because it was such a good point.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
But I have
I'm a man of
Yes, please.
I'd be torn to pieces by
That's
the security
true,
system
but
they have in that
we
tower.
can't. Like, I'll
But
take the Me Too
eventually, the
movement
NCR
because
will.
I'm a woman.
Because the
We
possibility
can't do
exists,
anything
you might
without
do.
male allies. We cannot. We have to have
Not
people,
yet.
and same
some-
with the race stuff.
spent
You
months
have
working
to
with
have
one
people
cop.
on both
What he did.
ends.
I tried
I'm
to
not
tell
sure I
him,
agree with
but he
that.
insisted
Really?
the largest
Oh,
con-
here we
because-
go. Could you guys tweet this to each other?
Because like if I got a white guy come to me on Twitter and say, hey Kweli, black people say nigga, why can't I say nigga? And I explain it to him, and he says, yeah, I don't agree with you. And then my next thing is, well, you don't have to agree with me. I don't fucking need your opinion, and I really don't need you. Like I tell white people all the time who tell me, you need white allies. No, I don't need allies based on their color. I need allies based on their allyship.
But I think the point that Monica's making, which is unavoidable, which is 50% of this country is male. So sure, you could do whatever you wanted on your side of the street as a woman, but you're ignoring the fact that 50% of this country is male. So ultimately, we do need men to change,
We
right?
need
So
men
we
to
gotta
acknowledge there's a problem
and also help probably mentor other men in how to fucking do this right.
That's true, but they
You
can't
know?
really be an ally until they do that. So if someone hasn't done that work, then that person you don't need. You need the person who's already done that work.
Yeah.
But I guess the question that we're all trying to get to is, well, how do you get someone to do that work if the first interaction is confrontation?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, and you can speak for women, I'll speak for black people.
I'll speak for hillbillies.
You know, and well, you can speak for yourself. I'll speak for myself. You know what I'm saying? I think the gut reaction for many people of color is what you just said. Is like, we need other people to do the work. So your gut reaction when someone comes to you, challenging you to do the work that you've been doing your whole fucking life, is like, fuck you, get the fuck out of here. I'm not trying to hear that shit. Take that shit. Go talk to someone who's being racist.
But if you really want to help
You know
us,
what I'm saying?
talk to
Stay
the idiot with
tuned
sunglasses
for
in the back of the plant
Armchair
building.
Expert.
He's been trying.
If you dare.
Our show is also brought to you by Spotify. You know, I get a lot of tweets from people wondering, how do I listen to Armchair Expert? And of course, if you're hearing my voice right now, you've already figured it out. But, you know, people think that it only exists here or there. And where it now exists is Spotify. Did you know that every single episode of Armchair Expert is now on Spotify? It's the same app that has millions of songs, and it now has thousands of podcasts.
That's exciting.
They're offering us this great outlet to put our show on.
Yeah.
And I want as many people to hear it as humanly possible. So I
That's
guess that
great.
was 6 billion people.
So you could listen to a song on Spotify and then listen to our podcast.
You
and
could
then
dance back and
take a
forth.
break and listen to a song
Shake your booty a
or a
little bit.
Talib song.
Oh yeah, get some qual going on that Spotify. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite shows and discover new ones. Just, you know, not a ton. Don't discover too many that you can't listen to Armchair Expert. We're human, we get jealous. To subscribe to this show, search for Armchair Expert, tap follow, and get every new episode delivered to you. Podcasts on Spotify, they're streaming right now. And now. And now. But I also think we've definitely lost the nuance in this country. We've lost the ability to hold two conflicting opinions at the same time. We have lost the middle road between anything. You know, what no one would accept is, my little sister, I fucking love her. You just met her. She could kill 12 people. I might think she needs to go to jail, but I also will publicly say I love her. I will love her no matter what she does. I love her. So what Matt Damon probably feels conflicted about is, I love Harvey Weinstein. I've had this relationship with him. There is a side of him that I know intimately and I love, and I'm very bummed that this is another part of him. But that doesn't mean you pulled my heart out. I think you see it a lot with other comedians who are friends with Louis C.K. Like, you have this whole experience in life with somebody, then you find out something terrible about them, and I think the outside world wants you to say, I don't love or care about this person's evil and they should be put in a hole, but that's just not realistic. That's not, there's no nuance to that, there's no reality. It's like, all things are true. This is despicable. I'm so bummed he did this. I also love this person would still push him out of the way of a train. Like, all things are happening at once.
Right. Well, look at Adam Horowitz from the Beastie Boys.
What happened with him?
Whose father was a professor in New York, and it just recently came out a few months ago that there was a bunch of sexually harassment, assault allegations against his father.
Okay.
He's named after his father. So Adam,
Right.
Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys, named after his father.
Yeah.
He came out immediately and was like, I think my father did all that. And he's still my father, but I stand with these women. I've noticed in the public sphere, he doesn't identify with his father's last name. And so, so I think that's the sort of counter to the, well, I love this person, because you can, I'm sure he still loves his father.
Like, is there anything your kids could do? There's nothing they could do, right? That would ever make you not love them.
Absolutely.
And not you know.
Absolutely.
Kristen and I have had these crazy hypothetical conversations where we find out our oldest daughter is killing and eating people. And she says, what do you do? And I say, I take her to an island where there's no people. I'll live the rest of my life and babysit her. I fucking am dedicated. Like, I love her. Nothing can happen.
And I think the human spirit allows for that. We all relate to that. But I think when we talk about a responsibility you have to the society, especially as a public figure, it becomes a different, it's like the Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you've lived a life that you've attained this great power through celebrity or being famous, you got to be careful with how you wield it and what you say. And the Louis C.K. thing is interesting to me because I'm a huge fan. I'm a member of his fan club. The day that stuff came out, he was just announced that he was putting out his movie. I was about to buy it for $5. Then I couldn't buy the movie, and there was like, I think Mark Maron. I think his response was something that I was able to look at and relate to and understand. You know what I'm saying? For him being
because
so
he
close.
basically said that, right? Like, all I can say is he is a really good friend, and I'm really sad by this.
But he also, the thing I think was important for him to say is, he said that I was friends with these comedians that were accusing me of this, and they didn't feel comfortable enough to tell me.
Right.
So what am I doing wrong that women I'm friends with can't come to me with this?
Oh, he said that.
Yeah, and he's like,
that's cool.
it was really interesting because he spoke about Louis, and he spoke about how he didn't like, but he also said that Louis lied to him. And he said he was still his friend, but he was like, I looked around, and what I do, I don't hire women in my work, and he said it made me, he said, I'm 40, 50 something years old, and I'm still growing as a person with this issue.
Yeah.
How can I have made it to this age and still be this ignorant about my own relationships? And I think when you stop growing, that's when you die.
Jon Stewart had a very similar funny response to being accused by Slate or some online magazine that his show was just a boys' club and all this. He said this on Stern. And he was so offended by it, right? He was so hurt because, again, he thinks of himself as a real champion for women, right?
Yeah.
And he's just wrestling with it all day, all night. He goes to the writer's room the next morning. He goes, can you believe what this woman said, Mike? John, did you hear this? Phil, did you hear what the...
Right.
And he goes,
right.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Oh, shit. There is some... She has a point.
Right. I just wrote an essay for Medium called Free Speech or Die, where I talked about how I feel like the alt-right is weaponizing free speech to shut down speech they just don't want to hear. And one of the points I make about the Me Too thing and safe spaces and trigger warnings and comedians like Chris Rock who say I don't go to colleges anymore because it's too politically correct. The first point I make is one, I don't hold a comedian to the same standard I would hold a politician or Richard Spencer. You know, I like we talked earlier, comedians is based on generalization. So I don't expect a comedian to be politically correct, but at the same time, the people at these colleges, the kids at these colleges, from the French Revolution to the counterculture movement in the 60s, they've always been on the right side of history. So if they're wrongly accusing people of things every once in a while, we might just have to take that as a society.
Yeah,
like,
some collateral.
yeah, there's somebody who might get called a rapist who's not really a rapist. That's going to happen. Well, I think because of what women have gone through.
But can I just say something on that point, which is, that's hard for me to swallow because our entire judicial system is set up on the opposite principle, which is we're going to have to live with some guilty people getting off so that no innocent person goes to prison. That's the ideal that we've kind of all collectively agreed upon for 300 years. So for me, that is hard to know that someone's going to go down. That's innocent. I don't know why. That's really hard for me to swallow.
No, it's fucked up. But what I'm saying is that it's like the conversation in South Africa right now. It's like white farmers. There's the Nazi propaganda is that white farmers are being genocided. It's white genocide going to South Africa because people are taking retribution for the land that has been stolen. It's like there are going to be some innocent white farmers that are going to get killed in South Africa. It's going to happen. You know how many innocent black farmers have been killed? You know how many innocent black? So when you look at the numbers, it's just a fact of life that is I don't know how you guys believe in karma. You know what I'm saying? But it's karma. It's chickens coming home to roost.
Yeah. So yes, what's often at play is that there are contradictory motives that we all have. So even our Constitution, this country, we are based both in liberty and we're based in equality. Both of those are explicitly stated goals, and often those two things are in direct opposition.
Yeah.
And so we are never going to get 100% liberty, nor are we going to get 100% equality because we have we have conflicting principles we're trying to pay service to. So this little pendulum is swinging back and forth between liberty and equality and and it can't be in one place. And likewise, you're bringing up something which I agree with, which is a utilitarian view of the world, which is at the end of the day, if this results in change, yes, some innocent white farmers die, a ton of black folks died, it's all going to come out in the wash. I will agree with that statement, but at the same time, I will then have a Kantian view of the world and go, no, one innocent man cannot go to prison. I do not accept that. So I have, I'm juggling two different, almost opposing philosophies.
I'm the same as you. I am the same as you, and it's like there's going to be times when it's unpopular, like Aziz Ansari is a great example, where his story came out, his people, he was accused, and our culture is like, you believe the victim immediately. That's that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But when you look at the blog, what was it, babe.net? What kind of peer reviewed is this blog that the story's on? The person's anonymous. When you look at that site, every other story is a gossip story. So it's not like that came out of the New York Times and the person gave their name. So can it be credible? Well, does Aziz add credibility to it because he definitely did text this woman back and you know what I'm saying? But did he pursue? So it's like all these things. Yeah, and I think it's definitely his word versus hers. None of us were there.
Right.
But at what point? But that's really the conversation. Is like, at what point does it become credible? Does it become credible on the accusation?
Yes.
Or do we actually look at the facts? And I think that's really what the conversation.
Well, and also let's add this. This is something that I don't ever hear brought up, which I think about all the time. If you and I leave here right now and we go to the grocery store and we spend an hour there and you ask us a week later what happened in that grocery store, I will promise you and I will have a completely different experience because I have all these triggers, right? I have fears. So I think, I grew up going to special ed. I think people think I'm stupid. So I'll remember this moment between the cashier and I that I interpreted as him thinking I was too dumb to find my credit card. You would have not seen that, right? It's a totally different, because I am so imprisoned by my lens that I am telling you the truth and you are telling the truth. And that is hard for us to acknowledge that two people can both be telling the truth and those things not meet up or jive. It doesn't mean one person's lying. It means that one person had a much different experience.
Yeah.
And Aziz is very cool. I think he's handled this in a great way, which is like when she started saying that was really disturbing to me, to me, it seemed like he pretty much said, wow, I had such a different experience.
Right.
I'm sorry. Let's talk about this.
Right.
Which I think is about as good as you can do in that moment.
And also his personality that he's developed through his comedy.
Yeah. And his
is
show.
that guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he plays Tom Haverford and he plays Randy and he plays these sort of misogynistic characters to make fun of them.
Yeah.
And his stand-up, a lot of his stand-up is awkward moments with women.
Yeah.
Awkward hookup moments, awkward dating moments. And so it went that exchange was like the sort of like the doppelganger version of him, if you're to believe everything that happened.
What I want to talk about is that in 1993, I graduated in 93 as well. In about 91 or 92, I'm discovering Jazz and Mataz, which I think you and I bonded on.
Yeah, that's
when I came to see you two times ago. Donald Byrd, that opened me up to Donald Byrd. I went down a Donald Byrd rabbit hole. I'm also loving De La Soul in 91, right? Maybe Three Feet Rising comes out, and I am. They fucking sampled Steely Dan. And I know. Yeah, things are happening at that moment, and that's right when you're kind of coming of age as an artist, right? Or you're starting to go, oh, I'm going to do this, right? A very golden kind of period for you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That stuff all informed what music you
absolutely.
chose to do?
That's absolutely it. Those are the artists that I was looking up to.
Did you like Arrested Development?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh god. And then obviously you like Tribe Called Quest, I'm sure a ton. And so was it helpful to have those examples? Because I touched on it earlier, which was at that time what was being monetized to great success is the kind of gangbanger lifestyle.
Well, that whole hip hop aesthetic was that 90s era. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg are probably the most popular act from hip hop in the early 90s. They broke through on MTV in a way that nobody else did. But Tribe Called Quest went platinum. Cypress Hill went platinum. DOS Effects went platinum. Gangstar, Nicest Move, these were De La Soul. Everybody went platinum.
Yeah.
These are platinum million seller, 2 million, 3 million seller records. So it's an underground aesthetic, but it was going just as platinum as the gangster stuff was back then.
Right. You have your exact same career in 1980 or 90. You're selling a ton of albums, right? Album sales have just precipitously fallen off since those days.
Yeah, people
Dr.
don't
Dre,
buy records.
So like the money is in touring. That becomes the business.
The money's always been in touring because even when people did buy records, they were paying the record company, not the artist. And so the artists who became entrepreneurs and had their own labels who were really getting paid are few and far between. As a matter of fact, on the Forbes list that just came out, the 3 highest paid musicians right now in the world are Jay-Z, Diddy, and Dr. Dre. All people who were smart enough to go independent 20 years ago.
Death Row. I saw a great documentary on them. Yeah, and at one point they had $500 million.
This is the Defiant ones?
Well, that one was fucking phenomenal.
I didn't see it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't. It's in my queue. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
This is this is the highest compliment I can pay to things, and I often will like email someone I've seen their work. When you make something that makes me feel like a piece of shit, like a useless, unproductive, uncreative piece of shit, I'm like, that's a good documentary. Because I watched the Defiant ones, and I'm like, you're a loser, man.
What are you doing with your life?
Just so impressive, all the stories that they go through. I think you'd really dig it as a musician too, because even like Bruce Springsteen, who of course I've respected, I didn't really know what his work program was, his work.
Yeah.
And you know,
I love the boss.
Yeah, and Jimmy Iovine was really educated through recording an album with
Springsteen.
Yes, and learning that work ethic and things like that. I really pick up that I love. It's like, well, I can never sing like Bruce Springsteen. I can't do these things, but boy, I can have that work ethic.
Right.
Minimally, I should have that work ethic.
Right.
You have that work ethic. This is your 16th album that you're out on tour with right now,
yes.
right? Radio Silence?
Yes.
How are you so prolific? How do you stay creatively kind of inspired?
I love it.
You love it.
I love it. I'll be doing it whether I was successful at it or not.
Yeah.
I didn't start to make money or to have fans. I started because I love it. So that's really inspiration. And then I'm rewarded from it because I can pay my bills, I can raise my kids. So on top of loving it, there are people do things because they're rewarded, and I'm greatly rewarded for participating in hip hop.
And your first success is Black Star. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And how do you know Mos Def? Can I just tell you how much anxiety I get when I say certain names? Even your name scares the fuck out of me. It wasn't until I went and saw you and saw your friends were calling you Qual.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, Qual, that's easy for me. I wonder if one day I'll just be able to call him Qual. Anywho, Mos Def, am I saying that right?
Yeah. He's now Yasin Bey, but you know, still answers to Mos Def. I was a fan of his. He was a
You
guy
were the
who he had a
Mark of
record
Kaiser.
called
You may
group called
continue,
Urban
but be warned.
Thermodynamics, and then he had a single as Most Def, and he was just a local hero.
Yeah.
Malcolm Jamal Warner had a spin-off show from the Cosby Show where Theo's character was a teacher at some school, and Most was a character on it. It was a Deion Sanders American Express commercial.
You're the one the
where
color
Most was in the
said would
commercial.
come.
This is before our career started.
him waiting
So he was like a local guy makes good.
So he's acting and
He's acting. He has, he's on the Cosby Mysteries at this time. He had a real close relationship with with Cosby and that crew. And he just was a guy in Brooklyn who would freestyle in the park with us, but then leave and go have a job. And all of us were broke. None of us were working, and he's being paid to rap and act at the time when I was just a teenager doing it.
Yeah. And is he your mentor at that point? Is he?
To a certain degree, I've learned he's special. I've learned so much from him. I learned how to record from him. I learned stagecraft from him. I learned my worth from him. He would walk into meetings and be like, "We need X amount of dollars," and I would look at him like, "Shut the fuck up!" He's like, "Get out the room. What are you doing?" And they would give it to him, and I'd be like, "Oh shit, we're worth that much?"
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So I learned even how to just stand my ground in a business meeting for most of it.
And is the Black Star experience 0 to 60, or is it a slow burn?
No, it was zero. It was pretty much zero. It was he became a fan of mine because he was coming to the bookstore that I was working at.
Okay.
I was giving him books to read, and then we had children at the same time. The mothers of our children became friends, so I started hanging out with him at his house. But I'm still a fan.
Yeah.
And so I would leave demo tapes at his house. And then one day he called me. He was like, "I listened to your demo tape, and it was really good." And we made a song together. And when he was signed to Raucous at the time. We made a song together. I took the song that we made to Raucous, and they were like, "We can put this out." I played them a bunch of my solo stuff. They didn't like any of it. I played them a song I had with Most Def. They're like, "This is a moneymaker." And people really, it's called Fortify Live. People liked the song so much that when I was performing at open mics, Most would show up. When he was doing shows, I would show up, and we developed this camaraderie on stage that predated the Black Star thing. But the people at Raucous noticed it. They were going to put out a record with me and Hot Tech and a Most Def record, but they asked us to make a record together to sort of put our names out there more.
Yeah.
And that's when we came with the idea of Black Star. So it took about a year to record. We dropped it, and from the time we dropped it, it was treated like an actual rap record.
Yeah.
And it was like I did.
How old were you?
20, maybe 21.
Holy fuck! What happens to your ego at that point?
My ego didn't really take off until like 3-4 years later. It took 3-4 years for me to be like, I'm the shit.
Yeah.
But back then I was still a fan.
It's so tricky to give young people a level of success. There's no training for that, right?
Yeah. See, we were famous, but we weren't making a lot of money.
Okay.
And I've never made $1 million in this. I mean, over time I have, but I'm not. I'm a very working class musician. You could probably, go to be a dentist and make more than me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
That's
a yo-yo.
another great Chris Rock joke.
Yeah, it's like
you could be an average dentist.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But what I have is cultural currency. I can walk into any room I want to walk into.
Yeah.
I can walk in any party I want to walk into. And what I have that most working class people don't have, the privilege of being a celeb, is even though I'm a working class musician, I can just go out there and create money. Whereas working class people have to wait 5 years to build up. I can be like, okay, I'm going to go do this deal.
And you also have something that could only occur to you in retrospect, which is by not being the brightest flame in the lineup, you also didn't burn out.
Right.
It's not like Vanilla Ice has this one song that catches the zeitgeist.
Right.
And then there's nothing there beyond that. Like
Right.
you just have this, super deep bench of work and always being relevant. And that weirdly in the end can shock you of like, oh, that was the right lane to be in maybe.
Right. And it brings it back to the De La Souls and the Gangstars of the world. Everyone has I have 2 or 3 hit records, but I'm not considered a one-hit wonder.
Right.
I am by people who only pay attention to mainstream. Like the white supremacists who troll me on Twitter, they'd be like, you only have 1 hit. Like you don't even pay attention to music. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But to people who pay attention, I'm not a one-hit wonder because that one hit, whether it's Get By or Hot Thing or The Blast, that was parlayed into developing a cult fan base.
That's what blew my mind on Wednesday, which is you do this cool thing where you go, if you were born in the 70s, put your hands up. Of course, I have to sadly put my hand up. And then you go, if the 80s, and I'm thinking, oh, well, there'll be people here in the 80s. Oh, shit, there's more people in the 80s. And then you do 90s, and that was almost the same as the 80s.
Yeah.
And then you do 2000s, and there's like a fucking 18-year-old kid in the audience.
Right.
And I was like, that is very unique. Also, crazy diverse crowd.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm proud of that crowd.
Yeah. It's really cool. Mostly thinkers, I would say.
Yeah.
If I could just kind of generalize what I thought I was seeing.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a lot of thinkers there.
Yeah, I think that my music attracts thinking people.
But you're touring, and so you say like 3 years later, there has to be a point when you're young that you're like, my God, I am the fucking shit, and everyone loves me, and this is going to be a rocket ship to...
There was a time I was in a club in New York on 8th Street called 40 Flavors, and Mos Def just reminded me of this recently when we just did a show, just did a sold-out show in Denver. He was like, remember we were sitting in that club, and I turned to you, and we were in the VIP section of the club, and we were like drinking champagne, and I was like, Ali, we're rap stars. I definitely remember when he said that. You know what I'm saying? So it was definitely like a thing that we vocalized between each other.
Yeah, and you're also in a place, and I don't even know if you could have awareness of this because you've only lived there, but New York in particular has a really, if you're famous or if you have cultural capital in New York, it's a much different experience. Like it really, the whole city can open up to you. Because I used to go there all the time as someone who was not famous. And then one time I went there, I was filming an episode of Punk. For some reason, Ashton was hanging out with Puffy all the time. Do you want to come with us? I remember that era. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I am in this long chain of SUVs, and we're going in and out of places, and the places is stopping, and no one has to pay a thing. All these things, and now this is an experience. Now, this does not happen in LA. It's not like you and I could get in some town cars and just start cruising around and be celebrated and not pay a bill. But this was happening. Like, there's this weird kind of like neat history of New York where it's like they like their Sinatras, they like their Billy Joels, they like, you know.
Puff thinks of himself as the black Frank Sinatra.
Yes, he seems to think that.
He really thinks that, and he mentioned it in the Get Him to the Greek movie. He's like, I'm Frank. Why am I Sammy? I'm Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. So it could be even more confusing because that city in particular you will find yourself in a VIP section drinking champagne at 26 years old, where that's probably not going to happen other places. And so what does that do to your head? Does that make you less patient with real life, with girlfriends, with wives, with kids?
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a writer here in Hollywood just yesterday, and she was telling me how when she deals with artists have everything revolving around them. And I was like, yeah, that's accurate. And it's hard to explain that to people who are not doing art for a living, because in a lot of ways you have to do it. And when you try to explain that you have to move like that, it sounds callous. It sounds out of touch.
Yeah.
I started my career working for Diddy. And handing out flyers and going to parties. So like, you know, Funkmaster Flex and Diddy, like these are the guys I was around when I first, before I got known as a rapper. When Diddy sees me now, he's remembering me from when I used to hand out flyers for his parties. Yeah. And
go get your shoe shine box.
Yeah, he never sent us to juniors or nothing like that. But what's interesting is there was a point in my career where me and Mos Def and everybody else around, we were known for conscious music. We're known to be those underground cats. And because I came from the Diddy era, I never was comfortable with that label. So I would go out of my way, and I do it less now as a 43-year-old man. But I was the party fucking king for like 10, 15 years. You didn't go to a party in New York or anywhere in LA. And I mean, they used to throw these parties out here with Zini parties. Like, I used to bring Prince out to the party here in LA.
Really?
Like, I would go to the Box in London. You know, like I was the party fucking king.
Yes.
I'd buy out the bar, I'd buy out the VIP, I'm bringing all my friends in. And it was almost like a way to tell Fit to not put myself in the box. Oh yeah, I'm gonna show up at the rally, I'm gonna be an activist, but I'm also gonna turn up, and you can't put me in that box.
Yes.
It was a focus of mine to go to all the parties and be seen. And that was also, you know, I've grown more into my own skin. I don't feel the need to do that no more. But I definitely spent a lot of years buying a lot of champagne and a lot of bottles of Hennessy, trying to prove that I could out drink and out party everybody.
Yeah. And don't you think that's a product of I think because we are these social animals that were designed to live in these large groups, that we are very, very consumed with status. We cannot divorce ourselves from it, because that's how there's alpha, beta, gamma, you know, all these things. And so invariably you're